All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with Mason Fuerst. Mason, how are you?
Good. How are you, Zach?
Good, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for taking some time to be on the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, of course. So, for those of you listening back home, Mason, really awesome guy, someone that I was grateful enough to recently connect with. He is a graduate from Northwood University, where he got his bachelor's and his master's, his MBA there. So, fellow grad school student or graduate like myself. So, that's always awesome to meet. And then fast forward to the present, and he is the co-founder of a company called Motiv, which really cool company, really interesting, especially for me, someone in the HR world. Motive is essentially a hiring platform that helps people find careers that are meaningful to them. It's a really cool kind of new way to find your careers and to be a part of that process. And it's something that Mason and I have had some really cool conversations about. So I'm excited for him to talk a little bit about that today. But that's just a little bit about Mason on the surface. Do you mind kind of giving us a little more of your background, who you are, what you're doing, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town, and I think a lot of that really set the foundation for what would be to come for the rest of my life. My mom and dad really super hardworking. My mom is an administrative director at a early childhood elementary. My father owns his own plumbing company, and I really got an understanding of what hard work was from my mom and dad from a really early age. My brother Jake and we used to race motocross growing up, so going through a lot of that process really gave me an understanding of what hard work, perseverance, and determination is. And it was at that point where, coming out of high school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, it became more of a understanding as to, okay, where do I want to see myself down the road? I think I'm always a forward thinker. And so at that point, I was trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do, couldn't figure it out. And then Northwood actually had come to my school and talked about the programs there and got really interested in the fact that they were an all business school. And that really set me on the path of going to Northwood and have really enjoyed my time there when I was there for 5 years. So I think overall, in general, growing up in a small town and then going to Northwood really set me up on the path that I am today. And I'm still super early in my career. I'm only 25, but I think that I've learned some things along the way that have been really meaningful and couldn't be more grateful for the people that I've met along the way.
I love that. That's awesome. So it sounds like really when Northwood went to your school, that's when kind of you had this aha moment of like, okay, business seems like the path for me. That seems like the direction I want to take my life.
Yeah, definitely. I think that racing motocross growing up, it didn't do me any favors in some aspect. It did me a lot of favors in working hard and persevering through injuries and other matters like that. But my goal ultimately was to become a pro and to be racing motocross at the highest level. And so I really didn't give too much thought into what a secondary plan looked like. And it wasn't until I stopped racing where I really tried to have to figure out, like, what do I actually like doing? What am I passionate
Hmm.
about? Where do I actually want to go in my career? And like you said, it wasn't until Northwood came to the school to where I really got an understanding of the programs there. They had mentioned that you can actually get into your core classes from day one. And so I took a visit there, loved the campus. It was in the fall, so it was gorgeous and super small campus, but it was right for me. And I love the fact that I got to know my professors one on one, the fact that I networked with a ton of people there, the fact that it was a lot of student run programs there was really cool. And so when people ask me now, do you regret your time being in Northwood or how do you see your career at Northwood? I always tell them I have no doubts about it. I loved my time there, would never do it over again. And it was the right fit for me. And I think that for anybody in general, I think it's all about just understanding yourself and trying to figure out what's right for you. And it may not be the right thing for other people, but if you're comfortable with your decisions and you believe in your intentionality, then I think that's the most important thing.
So Mason, with you saying that, like I can just tell that you have a very high level of self-awareness and you reflect on these things and you look internally and see kind of what you want, your direction, your path, your purpose. Have you always been pretty good with that, or is that a skill, that self-awareness, something that you've had to develop over the years?
Yeah, I think it's something I developed. I think that I think that if you look at people in general, I don't think people are ever born great. I think that greatness is developed. And there are certain qualities about people. We may have different talents than one another, and that may come innately to certain individuals that you may not have. But I think that greatness is developed over time, and I certainly have not developed a deeper understanding when I was younger. I think that I started to think a lot deeper when I got in college. And I'll be honest with you, my first 2 years in college, I really didn't take it too seriously. I was kind of going through the motions, just going to classes, having some fun with my buddies, and just doing my thing. And when it came to my junior year, I kind of woke up and I realized, wow, I only have 3 years left at best in college. And I really have to try to figure out what I want to do with my career. And so I really started diving into books, podcasts, different articles, just trying to figure out how I should best set myself up. And I got to reading a lot of Tony Robbins. I got to reading a lot of business books just in general, and trying to figure out my path that way. And it was kind of on that trajectory where I started to think a lot more about what I wanted to do and just reflecting on my life. And it's definitely something that I do a lot now, which is every day I kind of sit back and look at my past 24 hours and say, okay, if today was my last day, how would I grade it? Right, on a scale of one to
Mm-hmm.
10. And if I didn't get close to a 10, then what were the things that could have made it better? And then what were the things that I should maybe not be doing as much? And so over time, I've learned to say no a lot more to certain things, to really prioritize the things that I really want to focus on. And I think that's really helped me in general.
Okay. And now when you mentioned kind of like reflecting back in your day, that's something that I've I've been doing for a while and I find it really helpful. When you personally do it and you kind of give it that grade, where are you kind of finding yourself these days? Like, are you finding yourself pretty close to a 10 on most days, or does it fluctuate? How's that look for you?
Yeah, it definitely fluctuates. I mean, I'm human, so
Right.
by no means do I ever come close to a 10. I think that the highest I would ever rate myself is maybe a 7 or an 8, if that. I think
Okay.
that if you're a 9 or a 10, it is 100% fluid. I mean, that is an unbelievable life. And for me, there are certain aspects about my days where I've been like, man, that was really good. Maybe I closed a deal. Maybe I had a really good conversation with someone. Whatever the case may be, it may fluctuate my grade. But I think that I'm by no means where I want to be in terms of my career. There's still a lot more that I can do. There's still a lot more people that I can help and that I can meet. And so I'm still on that trajectory right now. But to say that I don't love aspects about my day, I think I would be lying. But yeah, I think I'm always looking to improve in any way that I possibly can, and always trying to be a forward thinker as to, okay, if I didn't like a certain aspect about my day, how can I improve that? Or where could I change things? But I think if you do that and you operate with a growth mentality, then you'll start to see your days stacking up better and better over time. But if you kind of find yourself fluidly just going through the motions, then I think that you wake up every day and you're like, man, it's kind of like yesterday. It's kind of like the day before, right? Where if you sit and reflect a little bit, you can understand parts of your day where you liked and you don't like, and then you can improve it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that, you know, even if life gets quote unquote easy because you have things figured out and maybe you're grading yourself on a 10, it also kind of begs the question of like, are you just being complacent or are you just staying stagnant in what you're doing, whether that's professionally, personally? So I think like having that growth mindset, like you said, and honestly, like I'm happy to hear that you said, you grade yourself maybe around like a 7 or so, because it's like to me that shows me that like you're hungry. You want to keep growing, you want to keep bettering yourself, you want to keep bettering the world and the people that you interact with. And I think that that's one of those there's skills or mindsets of kind of being your own biggest critic. And I think like through the conversations that I have in my personal life and on the podcast, like it seems like when people have kind of athletic background, it really kind of breeds that kind of thought of like I can always be doing more. I want to be the best. How can I achieve that?
Right, absolutely, 100%. I love the response that you had on that because I definitely am my biggest critic, hands down. And I think that there's always an inner part of us that has a little bit of a critique as to how we can improve in certain aspects of our life. And I do want to go on the record in saying that I don't believe that we should be grading each other on the same things because I think
Right.
everybody's aspirations are a little bit different. And so someone may be more career oriented. And so they have aspirations to move up in a company, make a better salary, whatever the case may be. Whereas someone might just want to start a family or they want to be able to coach their kids' softball team, baseball team, whatever the case may be. I think that all of our lives are different in that sense. So the way we grade ourselves has to be a little bit different. But I'm a big believer in that everybody's kind of running their own race.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a matter of you to compare yourself to someone else and say they have it better than I do because they're on a different race than you are. And it's just a matter of where you're at on your race and being your own critique to say, I'm either where I want to be or I'm not where I want to be, not XYZ is so much further ahead of me because they may be on a very much different race than you are. So I think that kind of focusing on yourself in that matter and just realizing that everybody's doing their own thing, that's okay.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's a great point of just, you know, what my desires in life are might be vastly different than yours, and like that's okay. Like you can't compare one to the other. One's not better than the other. And I think like the kind of running your race analogy that you used, I think back to the analogy that I use often about like, you know, I might be on my chapter 2 while Mason's on his chapter 15. So like we might both want to, you know, start a business and we have the same goal, but I might say like, oh, like Mason has it all figured out. I don't. I'm not as good, or I'm behind, but like I might be at the beginning of my book that I'm writing and he might be halfway through it. So you just never know kind of the backstory or the background of people that you see, whether it's on LinkedIn or social media, even or in the news. You know, we're all on our own path. We're all running our own race. And I think the best thing, like Mason was saying, is just to compare yourself to yourself. You know, where were you last year? Where were you last month? And where are you now? And how have you changed? How have you grown? And what can you do to continue on the path that you want to head on?
Absolutely. You said it best is just focusing on yourself and being comfortable with where you're at and never content because you're always wanting to improve either personally or professionally, but
Mm-hmm.
you're comfortable just knowing that you're running your own race and you're doing what your intentionalities are, not what someone else is doing or not where someone else thinks that you should be. You're doing what you believe is right and you're acting with your own intentionality. And I always kind of use like I'm always involved in the business aspect. And so I tell people kind of when we talk about this topic, I said, if you look at Mark Zuckerberg versus Ray Kroc, so Ray Kroc, he was the co-founder of McDonald's. Mark
Right.
Zuckerberg obviously started Facebook. So Mark started Facebook when he was about 20 years old, right? Super young.
Mm-hmm.
Ray Kroc didn't start McDonald's until he was in his 40s. Both have been very successful companies, but there's a 20-year gap between one another. And
Right.
so, much like our conversation, you could be someone in your 40s and say, man, I must have missed my boat. Well,
Mm-hmm.
not in that case, because McDonald's has become a very successful company.
Yep.
So, the race is never over, it's only over mentally.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, and you know, I think another good example that highlights that is, you know, maybe cliche or maybe a guilty pleasure of mine, but like your, you know, The Voice or American Idol, America's Got Talent, whatever, like, you know, you have people that go on there that maybe they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're like, oh, my career's over, my chance is over. And they can still win those shows, they can still be successful. So it's like really the only, you know, quote unquote expiration date that we have on our dreams or aspirations are ones that we put on ourselves. And yeah, you know, it might be, you know, societal where it's like, it might be hard in the world we live in to be like a pop star in your 70s, but I mean, you can still get a record deal, you can still put out music, you can still break streaming records. Like those things are possible. So really, it's just how we kind of wire our brain to set up those limitations or set those goals. And I think the mind itself, it's very beautiful, it's very powerful, it's a very strong tool that can either help us propel us to whatever our future plans or goals are, or it can be what sabotages us and really makes it so we can't achieve those goals. It's really just about the way that we utilize our minds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you brought up a really good point in the fact that I think the only thing that really holds us back is our mind and
Hmm.
ourselves. And the mind is such a super powerful tool. And I think that if you use it in a positive way, it can be very good, but it can also be very detrimental
Yep.
if you're sabotaging yourself with negative thoughts or thinking about the past or the future. I think personally, the happiest place that you can be is the present moment.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you shouldn't be planning your future, because I think that it is unbelievably good to be planning in advance and to try to determine what your goals are and setting high sights. But to be thinking anxiously about the future, but also be regretting things that happened in the past, I think that if you do either of those two things, it can really sabotage yourself from the present. And there's so much beauty in the present, right? The opportunity that's in front of you, the people that you interact with every day, having a good meal with one another. Like, those are beautiful things that you can only experience in the present. And if you're too focused on either the past or the future, then it can ruin that experience. And I think that personally, I've been bad at it at times in the past, but
Hmm.
in the at least in the present moment, I've been much better at it.
Yeah, it's a really tough thing, and even for people like ourselves who we acknowledge these things, we acknowledge the power of being present. To anyone listening, it's not like we're present 24/7 in our lives. It's very easy to get caught up in the anxious thoughts of the future or ruminate on the past. But I think it's like Mason was saying, there's so much beauty in what's in front of us, and whether that's as simple as next time you have a meal, put your phone down or turn it on do not disturb or whatever, or next time you're at a sporting event or a concert or performance, don't record everything on your phone. Just be there, watch it, be present. Especially I think your relationships, family, friendships, romantic, relationships, they just improve when you can just be fully in the moment with that individual or individuals, when you're you know talking, when you're having food, when you're doing an activity, whatever it is. It's just when you can kind of shift that mindset, you just feel more just fulfilled, I guess you could say it, in my opinion at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, I'm by no means perfect, and I've
Right.
I've suffered from it in the past on many occasions, and I think we all do
Yeah.
to an extent. But like you said, I think that I've gotten much better at it, at least now, and I've realized that there's so much good right in the present moment. And
Hmm.
if you are a firm believer that you're doing the right things day after day, then that adds up. And
Yeah.
even if it's something little, doing something little consistently day after day, it just builds into something much greater. And it's all about momentum. If you're
Yeah.
building momentum and you're consistent with things, whether it be wanting to start a podcast, wanting to build a business, wanting to start a family, whatever the case may be, if you're taking a little bit every day, then that builds up. And some days may be much more than others, but I always tell people, no matter if you did something small or something large in a day, it's all consistency. And I think that
Yeah.
consistency is is the path to mastery. And if you're consistent with something, you'll end up mastering it eventually. It'll take time, but
Hmm.
you'll get there.
Yeah. I agree 100%. It's that idea of the compound effect, like 1% better each day or 1% closer to your goal each day. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be 1%. It can be like 0.0000001%. You're still making that forward momentum. You're being consistent. And to anyone that's listening, and I've been there too. You might think like, oh, like, you know, Zach and Mason are talking about some great things, but I struggle with that. I struggle with the mindset. I struggle with being present. I struggle with goal setting, whatever it might be, because, where do you start, or how do you start, or how do you find that momentum? Or like, why do you have to put in that work daily, weekly, whatever, to achieve those goals? And I think anytime I have a conversation like that, the best thing I can relate to is just like for the visual, and because it makes a lot of sense to people, is like, think about like working out, right? Like, you have to keep going to the gym or working out at home, whatever, to grow your muscles. You have to keep fueling them. You have to keep working them out. You have to keep using them even after you've grown the muscle. Like, you have to use them in your regular life. Your mind is arguably the strongest and most important muscle in our bodies. So it's the same principle of like, yeah, we don't necessarily go to the gym to, work on our mind, but you should spend that time, try every day, but if not every other day, a few times a week, whatever you can afford to do, to just really work on that mental strength and do things that are really going to help your mind grow and expand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if this would work for everybody, but I know it's something that's worked for me at least,
Yeah.
especially with working out and some of my other goals is I try to make it as easy as possible. So if I set a goal, let's say my goal is to work out more, right?
Okay.
We'll keep it simple. Then I'll do something like put my workout clothes right next to my bed
Mm,
or set my alarm clock for a specific time. And if I wake up at that time, let's say my workout clothes are right there next to the bed. So it's almost like instant reaction. Okay, I set my workout clothes here. I got to go work out. So I
yeah.
make it as easy as possible. That way I can actually get there. And I've realized that there's kind of a 3-day rule to something. Like if you work out 3 days consistently, then you're more apt to follow through with that,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So like if you do a day, okay, then that's cool. You do a second day, okay, a little bit better, and then you get to the third day, you're starting to feel a little bit better. Not to say that you're going to reach your entire results
Right.
within a 3-day span, but definitely after the third day, you're going to get kind of in a rhythm to where it's going to be consistent. And when
Yeah.
it isn't consistent, then something's going to feel wrong because you're
Right.
like, wow, I've been working out now consistently every day. Now taking that out of my schedule is just throwing in a loop.
Yeah.
So I would either recommend that, or you could do this other idea that I had, which is you could reward yourself at
Mm,
the end of, let's say, a week. So for instance, you could say, okay, I have a bad habit with watching Netflix. Like I binge Netflix too much, but I want to
sure.
work out more. You could say, okay, if I work out every day for 4 days, then I can binge watch Netflix on Friday night, right?
Yeah.
And that can be my reward. So you're almost kind of building up to that point and saying, okay, I'm improving my health like I wanted to. I'm reducing my binge watching, but I still get both. I still can work out and I still can binge watch Netflix. It's just that I'm not doing Netflix until I achieve the prior, which is working
Right.
out 4 days.
Yeah. I think those are great practical suggestions and advice for anyone to try and implement. And I mean, honestly, even myself, like listening to you talk, Mason, I'm like, yeah, maybe I can try doing some of those strategies for certain things because I think, you know, as humans in our minds, we like to overcomplicate things. So, by making things easier for us, I think it just kind of lowers that barrier to entry. And then by kind of giving yourself that reward, I think it's like, you have something to look forward to. And then if we're getting really scientific, when you do that thing you enjoy, like Netflix, like you're saying, you get that spike of dopamine and you associate that feeling, that good feeling with, oh, I did my workouts for the week. So I think that those are definitely both great strategies for anyone to try to implement.
100%. 100%.
Definitely. So something that I wanted to get your thoughts on is the idea of goal setting. So I know that you've talked about kind of like, well, we've both talked about just with being present, you want to set those goals, but you don't want to have like that anxiety of the future and, some daunting goals or tasks, if you will. But I'm just thinking about the idea of goal setting. I think there's kind of different camps in it. Some people think like, have the biggest, most impossible goals and shoot for the stars. And some people think more of like, make more realistic goals because if you make this huge lofty goal, if you don't achieve it, you're going to feel like a failure or you're going to feel disappointed. It's better to have those smaller goals that you're going to accomplish. So I'm curious, what's your kind of perspective on goal setting or what's your kind of practice in doing so?
That's a good question. I think that I've heard a lot of different responses on this as well. I've heard the realistic goals. What I try to do is both. And
Mm,
what I try to do is I try to set a lofty goal and I try to bucket that with smaller goals, smaller
yeah.
achievable tasks. So almost think of it as like a timeline. And you can say,
Hmm.
okay, I want to achieve this lofty goal, let's say in 10 years, right? You give yourself a 10-year time span. Well, then you say, okay, well, what are more realistic goals that I can achieve prior to that? That
Yeah.
can add up to that. And those are smaller goals, but in the same sense, like we talked about before, if you achieve those smaller things, then they build up into something much greater, which could be that high goal that you were setting out to do. So I think for me, it's about, okay, what is your big aspirational goal? Because I think that as humans, we're passionate creatures. We want to shoot for the stars. And I'm a big believer in that. But I also believe that there's a process, and it's about knowing what the first step is to getting there, and then taking 2, 3, and 4 before you eventually get to 5. So I try to do it that way, where I set a big lofty goal, and then I try to bucket out what are smaller, more achievable goals that I can do to get there. And I feel like that's really helped me. And by no means have I accomplished a lot of the goals that I've set out to do, but I'm definitely on my way. And I think that
Hmm.
starting small is something that I've gotten a lot better at. And I think that for some people, it may very well help them. Is it's okay to start small, but if you have a big aspirational goal, just know that everybody started out small. And if you can
Exactly.
achieve those small goals, you'll eventually get to that large goal. And even if you don't, think about it. If you were to go, let's say, 8 years, right? And you were to go 8 years out of that 10, and maybe you stopped, or you decided to, end the goal, or maybe it didn't happen, whatever the case may be, at least you got maybe pretty close to there. Maybe it's
Hmm.
50%, 70, 100%, but you got much further than what you had expected. So I think it's a balance.
Yeah. I love your answer to that, and that's where I'm at with it, honestly. I think that for me, it's like make that big lofty goal, and then kind of like reverse engineer and come up with smaller goals to get to that big goal. And I think like I'm a visual person, so the visual that I like to think of is like just a ladder, right? Like I'm at the bottom of the ladder, I put my lofty goal at the top, and each rung is that individual goal of, let's start small and let's keep going up the rungs until we get to the top. And like you're saying, even if I don't get to the top of the ladder, I'm still looking at, the view from a much cooler, higher up perspective than I was when I was on the ground.
Absolutely. And I think that ourselves, Zach, I think that we get caught up in trying to already be at level 10 before even
Yeah,
getting to level 4 or 5.
yeah.
And like I said before, I think it's reverse engineering the process, much like what you talked about as well, which is, okay, if I'm going to get to 10, how do I get to step 3 and 4 first? And
Mhm.
let that be my main goal there. I can shoot for 6 and 7. But I just want to say, for like any younger people, like, it's okay. Like, you're never going to be where you want to be within the next 2 or 3 years. But if you're at least following your intentionality and your passions, and you're doing things that you believe are adding value to your life, other people's life, or society in general, then you'll start to see that you're getting closer and closer to where you wanted to be eventually. And I think that
Yeah,
if you keep doing that, one day you'll wake up and you'll realize, man, I have the life I wanted all along. I just took little small steps along the way and believed in what I was doing, and I eventually got here.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, you did a really good job summarizing it. Like we tend to feel like we're in some sprint, we're in some race to the top or to whatever you're chasing, but really we're in for the long haul. It's I know it's cliche, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. And just take your time and just work slowly and just like even think about like I think about when I was in school and if I had like I don't know, like 100 math problems or something to do in, a class I'm in. It's like if you do, a few each day, then you're chipping away at it, and slowly and surely you're going to accomplish that whole feat of getting the assignment done. So just don't feel like you're in a rush or feel like you're in a hurry, or if you feel overwhelmed, or if you feel like maybe you took some steps forward and now you're taking a step or two back, like that's just part of the process. And it's just the growing pains that come with chasing your goals and passions.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of life as like a wave, where it
Yeah,
goes up and down. And sometimes you're going to be at a really high part, and sometimes you're going to be at a really low part. But whatever part you're on, I would say don't get comfortable with it,
yeah,
because it'll go up and it'll go back down. And I think that if you can keep steady and keep consistent with it, and just know that that is really the wave of life, then you'll be really comfortable with the day to day. But yeah, I've definitely experienced my fair share of highs and lows, and I'm sure you have as well, Zach. But
Yeah.
I think that just in general, if you're consistent, then you'll have an understanding that this is just the cycle of life, and I
Hmm.
got to take what I got and then make the best of it.
Exactly, and right on with that kind of idea of being consistent, as Mason alluded to, we've both had our highs and lows, and something that is still something that I try to work on, even right now in the present of my life, is not getting too high on your highs and not getting too low on your lows. I think for me, that's something where it's like, I hit a huge goal and I'm super happy, I'm excited, I'm feeling, incredible, and definitely feel that way. Definitely celebrate those victories and those goals and accomplishments. But then if I feel like I'm hitting one of those lows in the wave, I'm like, man, this is terrible. Like I've ruined everything. I failed completely. And I just beat myself up. And I think that that comes with being a perfectionist. It comes with being my own biggest critic, which, those qualities in me have helped me accomplish a lot. But at the same time, I've learned as I've gotten older, like you have to find that consistent balance of like, just, just be present. Don't get too excited. Like get excited, but not overly, but don't get too down on yourself. Just kind of be in the middle and, celebrate when you need to, kind of reflect when you need to, but don't let those highs or the lows kind of deter you from where you're trying to get.
Right. I've read this rule. It's called a 24-hour rule, and I've
Yeah.
read that athletes do this as well as successful people, where let's say you've had a big win or you just closed a huge deal. Celebrate, like you said, take
Hmm.
24 hours, celebrate it, just absolutely lavish with your team, whatever you have to do. After that 24 hours, get back to business, get
Yeah.
back on track, because there's always that next step, that next goal. And I think that you see a lot of the best teams do this. You see a lot of the best companies do this, where they never settle. Yes,
Right.
they're very appreciative of achieving a certain accomplishment and they've gotten there. But if they rest on their laurels too much, then they end up becoming stagnant, and
Exactly.
they end up falling back and detracting from what got them there in the first place. And so I think that as an individual, as a business, as a team, whatever the case may be, celebrate that achievement 24 hours and then get back to business.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a great rule, and I think that that's something that I want to work on implementing. And to anyone listening, I think it's definitely a very good kind of starting point on what you can try to implement in your own life. But
Right.
Mason, kind of pivoting a little bit, I'd love to hear about kind of your experience, thought process, and just how everything's going with your business.
Absolutely. So I love telling stories. So I'll start off with the story of how we
Okay.
got here. So I graduated from grad school in 2020. And as you know, Zach, 2020 was definitely not a good time, not for any graduating student nor the world
Right.
in general. And so I came out of school in 2020 and really had spent a matter of 6 months trying to get my first position. I had applied to hundreds of different jobs out in the market and really received little to no response from any of them. I
Hmm.
got rejected so many times. I was ghosted on an incredible amount. And I had only gotten on maybe 2 or 3 interviews, if that. And the 2 or 3 interviews that I did get, they told me that I either didn't have enough experience or I didn't have the right experience for the position. And this was an entry level role. So it's not as if I was asking for the world. I was just really looking for an opportunity to get into a company, get my feet wet, and try to help them as much as I could. So after I got rejected for like the second or third time, I really started to fall into a state of depression, to be honest with you. I started to question myself, the value that I had to offer, if I could even get a job, and just why the hiring process had to be so difficult. I said, for something as important as your career, getting a job, why did this process have to be so stressful? It shouldn't be like it. And so after some thought, I decided to pay a resume writer. And so I hired this guy, paid him $200 to freshen up my documents. He redid my resume, my cover letter. And by the end of it, he got me on a call and he said, Mason, your resume was actually really good. He said, the problem is it was never going to get through the hiring software. And I said, well, what do you mean? Like hiring software? I have no idea what that is. And he's like, a lot of companies use applicant tracking software, which scans resumes and determines whether or not they're a good fit.
Hmm.
And they're mainly looking for keywords and formatting. So if you have a lot of the buzzwords, a lot of the keywords based on the job description, then there's a higher likelihood that you're going to get through. But if not, then it's going to reject you. And it can scan a resume in 6 seconds and reject you as simple as that. And he said, that's what you were dealing with, is you had not enough keywords and you didn't have good formatting. So he's like, I would suggest doing both of those things to try to improve your chances. And he's like, well, what are you using to apply? Are you going on websites? Are you going on job boards? And I said, well, I'm mainly using job boards like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I would try to just go on a website and apply through there. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He's like, a lot of these companies, they typically just use these job boards like Indeed or LinkedIn to promote their roles because they have so many candidates, so much traffic on a day-to-day that are looking for jobs. And so he says how that process works is that they'll go onto Indeed, they'll click apply, then they'll go to the company's website, where now they have to upload their resume, maybe manually fill out all that information again, and then submit their application. And then it goes into the ATS. And I said, you mean to tell me that this is information that I and millions of other people do not know? And it's really screwing us up in the hiring process. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, yes. So he's like, if I were to give you any piece of advice, redo your resume, make sure that it matches the job description, and don't use these job boards as often. Just go to the company websites. And so it was really at that point where I started to say, maybe there's something that we can do about this. Maybe we can actually build something that could make the hiring experience way better and could avoid candidates from having to go through all those struggles that they're enduring through the hiring process. And then maybe there's also an opportunity where we could help employers and maybe they're experiencing. And so that really led me on the path of starting this entrepreneurship journey and starting Motiv with my co-founder. I will have to say, though, I had no idea how to start a company. I did not study entrepreneurship at college, even though we were in all business school.
Right.
I in fact studied franchising, which is a little bit different than
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. Franchising, you have a playbook plan on how to start the business
Yep.
and how you should run it. Entrepreneurship, it's very much the Wild West where you're trying to figure
Yeah.
things out. So that really was the start of me leading on this path. And so it really began out of my own frustrations, and it started to become something that I wanted to see could also help a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I think honestly, it feels like a lot of things that are really good for us as consumers or good for the world or just gives a lot of value are ideas that are kind of bred out of frustration.
Right. Yeah, I think that something that I've learned is that if you're going to build a startup, do it out of either a problem that you've had or a problem that other people are having.
Yeah.
And because starting a company is so hard and there's
Mm-hmm.
so many days that are going to be down more than up. And so if you have passion behind the problem and a good why behind the reason why you started in the first place, then you'll continue. But if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, if you're doing it just because it's a next career step, or you're doing it for the money, or you're doing it for whatever case may be, then I don't think that you'll endure with it as long. And
Right.
I have seen different case scenarios where maybe someone's out to prove something to someone else. Maybe they're doing it because they've had the frustration themselves. Maybe they just want to really change the world. If you have a good intentionality behind it, you're much more likely to succeed. But if you don't, then the chances of failure go even up, and the chances of success and actually building a good startup are very low to begin with. So I would definitely start it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And you want to be passionate about what you're doing and you want to just care about it because at the end of the day, like Mason was saying, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy road. It's going to take a lot of work and dedication. So you want it to be something that you can get behind and that you believe in. So I think that that's huge. Kind of looking at your journey so far, Mason, like what would you say is the best part and maybe the most challenging or most difficult part about starting your own business?
Best part is definitely talking to users and seeing the reaction either on their face or on a call that, wow, this is really going to help. Like the most unbelievable thing that I do is talk to the people that this is going to help. whether it be
Mm-hmm.
candidates or employers, and to be able to talk about their frustrations and the things that they deal with on the day to day, and to know that we're solving problems that are going to help them, and to hear them say, oh my gosh, this is amazing, like I can't wait till you guys actually get this out, I can't wait till you solve this. That's the best thing about what I do, because it's touching the lives of many people. And it's much like we talked about before, where it's a compound effect, which is if it helps one person, then it may help 10. And if it helps
Mm-hmm.
10, it may help 100. And so I love the thought that if we just help one person, then it can turn into something much more. But in order to help one person, we need to build something that they absolutely love.
Yeah.
And one of our core values at Motiv, even though we're just a startup, is to build a wow experience. And the way we look at it is this: everybody expects a 5-star experience, right? But how can you get to that 10-star experience and do something beyond expectation? And so I'll give you an example. Right? Let's say you order something from DoorDash, right?
Okay.
The expectation is that they show up and they deliver your food.
Right.
Now that's a 5-star. That's
Yep.
what you expect. But what if they did something way more than expected? What if they went above and beyond and did something like personalize your whole order, or put it together in like a nice box or gift basket or something? Or maybe they knew what your favorite foods from your history were, so they included some things in the order. Maybe they went above and beyond and they greeted you with your name at the door and said, hey, Zach, I got you your order, but I also knew that you liked this and that. And so I
Mm-hmm.
included it within the package. And you're like, wow, this was way more than I expected. And so for us at Motiv, how that looks like is everybody expects to go on a platform, find a job that they like, and then apply, right? And
Right.
it's as simple as uploading a resume, applying to the job, and then hoping to hear a response. So what we said is, how do we make it above and beyond that? So what if we did something like we personalized all the jobs to you specifically? And so you went through our onboarding process and selected exactly what you're looking for in a job. And then we curated a set of roles that not only fit your experience, education, and top attributes, but they're also really good culture fits,
Mm-hmm.
right, as a company, based on you as a candidate. But how do we go above that? Well, instead of uploading a resume and having to edit it to the job description, how about you just create a profile? It can include way more information than what's offered in a piece of paper with a resume. Things like an intro video, letters of recommendation, maybe portfolio from some of your prior work, especially if you're a designer, photographer, etc. And then you can just submit your application in seconds for all of the jobs that you match with.
Mm-hmm.
And then we said to ourselves, well, how can we even go above that, right? Like if that's like a 6 or a 7-star, how could we even top that? Well, for every application that you send, you'll never be ghosted. And so we provide candidates live updates on every one of their applications. So if one of their applications was viewed, they'll know. If it was declined, they'll know. And they'll even receive feedback on if it was declined, as to, man, okay, maybe I wasn't a close enough fit, or maybe there were just better matching candidates. And then you'll also receive updates on if you're still in the process, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't know, like, am I still in the
Yeah.
running for this job?
Yep.
Am I still being considered? You will know at every point where you stand in that hiring process, and will receive feedback. And so those are really 3 core tenets that we really wanted to focus on to
Mm-hmm.
improve the hiring experience prior to what it's been. And it's been awesome to see the reaction that we've gotten from
Yeah.
candidates in that aspect, but particularly with the ghosting, because that
Yeah.
happens so much.
It does. Yeah. I mean, I love that. And I mean, it just hearing you talk, Mason, about what you're doing with Motive, and whether it's right now in this conversation or in previous conversations, how just a business model that you have with Motive. And just as someone who, I graduated from undergrad in 2018, then just finished my master's in 2022. I've had different times in the world and different times in my life where I've been in that job market, in that job search, and it can be monotonous and it can really take a lot out of you. And of course, I have peers, family, friends, significant other who have gone through this process as well, so I know how frustrating it can be. And just when you explain what you're all trying to cultivate at Motive, I think it's just really, really empowering. And then even so much so is, for me being an HR professional, being a recruiter right now, part of the reason why I wanted to be a recruiter, and a large, probably 98% of the reason why I recruit the way that I do, is because of the negative experiences that I've had. So, like you're saying, whether that was being ghosted by employers, I make it an apparent thing with every candidate I talk to. You will hear from me. It might not be the news that you want, unfortunately, but you will hear from me. You will always know where we're at. I've had jobs where, like you said, I don't know where I'm at in the process. It's been 2 months since I've interviewed. Am I still being considered? I don't know. So maybe I move on, and then a month later I hear like, "Oh, yeah, like we actually loved your application. Like let's move you forward to a final interview." And it's like, where was this a month ago when I had no idea? So to me, it's like, as much as I can do to keep candidates informed and to make sure that there's just no miscommunication or that it's a pleasant experience, it's really kind of cool to hear that my own philosophy that I've developed through my experiences is exactly the platform that you're building out and exactly what I wish I had when I was going through those experiences.
Right, absolutely. I think that we started this for the right reasons, and we realized that this was a two person platform, right? It's a marketplace per se, which is that you have to appease the candidate, but you also have to appease the employer.
Hmm.
And I think that something that we learned along the way is that our main target for Motive initially to start is small to mid-sized businesses. So small businesses, startups, mid-sized businesses, particularly anywhere between one person to 300 people is where we're really starting this business out. And we understood that those are the businesses right now that are experiencing unbelievable issues with the hiring process and trying to attract great talent and trying to get the type of people that large organizations are. And so we really believe that it's empowering to be able to provide these businesses with the tools and capabilities that a lot of these big organizations have. And so we really try to focus at least on the employer side from a personal branding standpoint.
Hmm.
How can we really personalize your brand to make it very attractive to candidates? I've spoken with I don't know how many candidates so far, and something that they've really talked about is company culture and
Yeah.
how important that is in their decision as to whether or not to apply to an organization. So we wanted to do things like on a company profile and an application. Like when you look at an application on Motive, you will see three sections. You will see a summary section, which is the basic responsibilities, characteristics, and experience about the job. You will see a company section, which dives into the company culture. So you'll be able to see a culture video, what the mission and values of that organization are, as well as employee testimonials. And then you'll also have a media section where you can check out photos of the work environment, the team, the products that the company is making. And so within one small application, you've kind of got this broad sense as to
Hmm.
what the job entails, who the company is, what they do, and do I actually align with this organization and want to be a part of it? And like I said before, the benefit is if you want to apply, it just takes seconds, just one
Yeah.
click of a button, and you're sending off your application. So we really have tried to streamline this process as best we could, but we realize that we're still only scratching the surface. There's so much more that we can still do to help employers and help candidates in this process. And so really that's kind of been the beauty in the start. I would say to the second point of your question, just getting to it, the hardest part is dealing with my own emotions,
Mm.
right? And much like we talked about before, which is I truly in the heart of hearts want this to help an unbelievable amount of people because I've been able to witness myself what it feels like, and I've been able to talk with so many people what it feels like. And to go through the process of trying to get employers to buy in, trying to get candidates to buy in. Sometimes it's not as easy as what it thinks. Like, I think a lot of people, especially when they get into software and they try to build a software startup, the mentality is just, hey, build it and they will come. If you build
Hmm.
a great product, then people will use it. But what I think I myself underestimated as well as I know other people who I've learned from as well, is that distribution is just as important as
Yeah.
building the product. And if you can't sell it, if you can't have people buy into it, then some of the greatest products will fail. And
Hmm.
I think that it's so important to do things that don't scale when you're first building a product, and really talk to those people one on one.
Yeah.
Watch them use your product. Try to figure out where it can be improved. And I can't tell you the amount that I've learned from just watching people use the product or seeing people use the product and trying to figure out, oh my gosh, like these were all things that seemed very natural to me, but in the customer's point of view, they were so confused. They had no
Right.
idea what to do, where to go. And people are simple creatures. They want things to be as easy as possible. And
Hmm.
you can never know that until you watch someone else actually use your product and be okay with whether or not they think it's good. Because if they think it's bad, that's okay too, because
Right.
you're only going to improve it. It's never going to be unbelievable from day one. So I think the hardest part for me is getting over my own emotions and realizing that I'm not going to be at scale from
Yeah.
day one, that I'm going to just have to take baby steps and really focus on doing things that don't scale, talking with people, building a better product. And then hopefully more people start to realize the value of that product. And then it starts to kind of incrementally take off more and more. But that's been the biggest thing for me, is to try to get out of that scale mentality and think
Sure.
that I'm going to build a big company right away. It's never going to happen like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice for anything that you set out to do. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to work incrementally towards that goal or towards that final product. And I mean, Mason, something that I just want to kind of give you some credit towards, is just like something that I think is important, that it can be really tough for us, is just like kind of detaching from the ego that we have. And I don't mean that in like a we're all egotistical type thing, but the ego of like, you've never, from my perception of you and where Motive's been, like, you've never had an issue talking to experts in the field of like, hey, I want to make this idea into something that people are going to love. From your experiences, how can I do that? What can I do? You also have the mentality of like, I want this to be extremely impactful to people, but I know that I'm not going to get there in a blink of an eye. It's going to take time. We're just scratching the surface. We're just getting started. And I think that that's something that helps keep anyone grounded and just shows that like you're doing this for the good for good reasons. You're not doing it because you think you have the solution to a world problem and you're better than everyone and you just need to get it out there. You're trying to solve a problem that started really from your own personal experiences, and you're able to realize that it's not just you that has that experience and has that problem, and now you're trying to address it by bringing in people who have had similar experience, whether it's candidates, whether it's asking for feedback on, hey, what does the user experience look like, because like you said, it might be super intuitive to you, but then someone else might be like, I don't even know what you're trying to do with this. And it's really cool to hear that you're able to kind of detach from that ego, like I was saying, and just really take in all perspectives and all opinions and know that, you're just wanting to grow and build it the best it can be. And that doesn't mean that you're going to have all the right answers yourself.
Absolutely. And I think you said it best with saying that you have to take ego out of it and
Hmm.
realize that at the end of the day, you're trying to solve a problem for other people.
Yeah.
And I've had to realize along the way too that I may have it in my mind, things that I want to build. But remember, it's not just you that's using the product, it's so many other people. And
Yeah.
you really have to lean on other people's opinions, the perception of the customer, to determine what it is that they want. Because I think that's where the best companies are able to shift, is they're able to understand what the customer's needs are, pivot, and then make those adjustments necessarily that gives them what they want. And if you're solving their problems, then that ultimately is what's going to create a successful business. Not the fact that you believe that it should be XYZ, but the fact that the customer is telling you, these are my problems, and how can I solve them in the easiest way and deliver the most value out of that. I think that we've learned that along the way, and there's definitely been things that we estimated that we thought would be good. But then when we got feedback from customers, we had to pivot and make adjustments. And
Hmm.
we've seen benefits of that. And I think that if you operate with a unegotistical mentality like that, you're always putting the customer first. You're always putting
Exactly.
those good intentions first. And if you're doing that, then you'll end up creating a good product overall and a great experience.
100%. I totally agree with you. So Mason, you said that you're just really scratching the surface with Motive and where you're at. What are some of your goals, or where do you kind of see Motive going? Whether it's throughout the rest of this year or in the years to come. Like, what's the vision moving forward?
Right. So the vision for us is big scale is we want to be the premier platform for anybody to find a fulfilling career. And by a fulfilling career, I mean that can be different for everybody, much like we
Mm-hmm.
talked about before, where a fulfilling career to someone may be moving up the corporate ladder. A fulfilling career to someone else may have a more flexible job that pays more to support their family, or the fact that it offers them a greater environment, a safer environment that they feel really appreciated in. So it can mean different things to different people, but we want to be a platform to help people find fulfilling opportunities, fulfilling careers, and to create an experience unlike what anybody has had in the hiring process before. I think that for us as Motive, we were really trying to focus on creating that 10-star experience.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that we're trying to do along the way in order to get there. And the way I foresee hiring going forward is it's going to be much more experiential,
Yeah.
to where you as an individual will be able to kind of see, feel, and almost put yourself in the environment of that company or that position before actually applying there. And I think that hiring itself has been very text-based for so
Mm-hmm.
long. And I think that the transition now is much more visual and actually trying to put yourself in that company or that position before even applying. And that's where we're going with Motive is we're trying to strive in that direction, but we know that we can't get to that step until we at least get the first part right. And so the
Right.
first part for us is to alleviate the big issues, which at least for candidates come down to personalization, time, and transparency. If we can do those things for candidates, we're really good. For employers, it's sourcing, vetting, and inefficiency. If we can solve those three things for both sides, then we'll start to gain more traction. But at least our goals for this year, short term, our goals this year is to help our first 1,000 candidates get hired and to help our first 100 employers hire really good people. And it might sound small, especially for a hiring platform, but we truly believe, my co-founder Andrew and I, we truly believe that it is much better to make 100 people or 1,000 people absolutely love you than have 10,000 people or 1,000,000 people just sort of like you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would recommend anybody who's trying to start a startup, go follow Y Combinator. I've gotten to know a handful of founders who've gone through the Y Combinator program, and Paul Graham, one of the founders of Y Combinator, talks about that it's much better to have 100 people love you than 1,000 people that just sort of like you. And the reason is because if you have 100 people that absolutely love you, your product, your experience, then they'll go tell their friends about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll tell their friends about it. And if you look at the totality of products that have been successful, it's probably because you heard it from someone else, and someone said, hey, you got to try this. Hey, you got to go check this out. And that's much more trustworthy of a way to buy into something if that
Yeah.
happens. And the only way that you can do that is providing an experience people love, and not just focusing on like, hey, how do we get to scale and how do we just make a bunch of money from this product? If you just focus on the small totality of people first, make them love you, then you'll have a great product. So that's where we're at. We want to make our first 100 to 1,000 candidates love us, as well as our first 100 to 1,000 employers love us. If we can do that, we'll be in a really good spot.
I love it. That's amazing. It's great to hear kind of like the long-term scope and goals that you have, but also just kind of like the current year we're in, what your goals are. And I mean, I think they're great. And as someone that's gotten the chance to get to know you personally, Mason, and what you're doing with Motive, I'm excited to celebrate those accomplishments with you. And to hear kind of the direction you're going in, it gets me excited. I mean, both from a consumer, I've been in that position for jobs perspective, but also from my professional lens of like, hey, if I could hire people more efficiently and with less headaches, I'd love that. So, I think it's cool to kind of see the duality of what you're doing and what you're building and how that can impact, I mean, me, I guess, on a selfish level, but just to kind of see the change it can make. And I'm excited, and I have complete faith that you and your partner are going to be able to take Motive to the next level and really just impact so many people, whether it is people looking for jobs or employers looking to find people for their jobs. I think that you're doing great things, and my biggest thing for me personally is really getting behind good people. And if there's someone that I say that like they're good people, I'm gonna support them. I'm gonna believe in them. And there's no doubt in my mind that you're one of those good people out there that are doing good in a field that I'm passionate about. So, I know the sky's the limit for you, man.
I really appreciate that, and
Yeah.
it's a team effort.
Hmm.
My co-founder has been unbelievable,
Yeah.
incredibly hardworking, and it's really been an effort from the early employers and candidates who have really given us a chance.
Yeah.
And as a startup, it's definitely hard to convince the first few people to use it. And
Hmm.
we've definitely been at that stage, and we're kind of
Sure.
in that cycle right now of getting people to use the platform for the first time. But I think that the intentions that we have are really good. And I
Yeah.
want to thank the people that have been involved with this, because it's been a team effort. And
Hmm.
I want to thank those candidates and those employers who have really poured their heart and soul into giving us the feedback that we need and that will help us get to the next level where we want to be. And it's definitely a step-by-step process, but we're excited to really take that next step
Yeah.
and help people as much as we possibly can. And like I said, we're still scratching the surface.
Hmm.
So I'm an open book. I love honest transparency. And so if you ever go on Motive and there's something that you feel could be improved that would help your experience, that would really be a beneficial aspect to help many other people as well, let me know about it. And I want to hear those things, because yes, great things are really nice and it's cool to hear positive feedback, but I really want to hear the stuff that you don't like, the stuff that you
Hmm.
think could be improved. And I think that if we can hear that type of information, then we'll make the type of experience that you absolutely love. And we want to make you say, wow, I love using Motive. It is unbelievable. Like, I want to use it to get a good job, and then I don't want to use it for a while, right?
Right.
I
Yep.
want to get my good job and then not use it for a while. And that's
Yeah.
really our intentions, is to say, hey, I've gotten a great career. If I'm ever in the market again, I'll use Motive because it was an unbelievable experience. And then for employers as well, to say, man, the talent that we're bringing here, they just really great culture fits, unbelievable workers. We just love using this platform. And so I know I've said the word love a lot, but that's really what we're striving for, is to create a love
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And, I will attest to that. Like, if you're listening to this and you check out Motive, or you're listening to this as someone that has gone through the process of looking for a job and the frustrations, or maybe you're going through it now, or maybe you're an HR professional and you have thoughts on the hiring process that you've, implemented at your place of work, or ones that you've had in past positions or whatever, I definitely encourage you to reach out to Mason. I know for a fact he would be glad to hear any feedback, any thoughts, any opinions, any perspectives, and just kind of use that to help him and his team just build out the best experience for everyone. So, I mean, he's not joking. He definitely is open and happy to have any of those feedbacks, whether it's positive or negative. That's kind of just what's going to help just take Motive to the next level. So please do reach out.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm always
Yeah.
on my email. And so if there's something that you ever want to talk about, any feedback that you have, ideas, whatever the case may be, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is mason@joinmotiv.com, and Motive is just Motiv. And so reach out to me anytime. Would love to hear your thoughts and feedback.
Okay, perfect. And I will I'll put your email in the description, Mason. So anyone listening, Mason's email will be there, so you can reach out to him that way. And then in terms of just kind of following along with Motive and everything, what would be the best places for anyone listening to check out Motive?
Yeah, best place to check us out is on LinkedIn. We're
Okay.
always posting on there. And for anybody who wants to join our private community group, we give early access and glimpses of things that we're building. So if you want to join the private community group, definitely follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and I'll send you an invite if you're interested. But our Motiv page is also on LinkedIn. We're on there all the time. So check out the posts that we make, as well as send me a DM to join the community group. Would love to have you guys.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, just like Mason's email, I'll put everything for LinkedIn in the description of the episode as well. So please do click down there, check out Motiv, give them a follow, give them a like, all that fun social media stuff. Reach out, let Mason know if you want to be a part of that private community so you can get some cool insight to all things Motiv. And just, remember when you're using Motiv, years into the future, just remember this conversation, remember where it started. But Mason, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Is there any final thoughts or message that you want to give to anyone listening?
Yeah, I would say for anybody listening, shoot for the stars and be okay with being adaptable to life. I never thought that this would happen to me. When I graduated school, I thought I had my life mapped out, and then things changed. And I didn't know why, but I think, like Steve Jobs said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And if it wasn't for me going through the grad program, going through COVID, and then experiencing those struggles in the hiring process, I would have never started Motiv. And I look back on my life and I say, had things been different, I would have never come across this opportunity nor even considered pursuing it. So my final thought is that sometimes blessings can be in disguise, and look for opportunities when things are at their worst, because they can definitely change your life.
I love that. That's an amazing way to wrap it up. And, kind of the way that I look at it and thing that I always say, I know it's a cliche, is everything happens for a reason. And, I'm glad that everything that you've experienced, Mason, has led you on this path and led you to where you are. I'm, honored to say that I know you and to be able to connect with you. And I'm excited to see what you and the team behind Motiv bring to life for us in the future. And, I'm going to be someone that, knock on wood, that I'll have to use it myself as a job searcher anytime soon, but I will use it when the time comes, and hopefully use it as a recruiter as well. So, congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. Congratulations on everything that you are going to accomplish, and I'm just excited to watch from the sidelines and see what you all do.
Thanks, Zach. Really appreciate all your help and support. And thank you to everybody else for your help and support. We're just at the start, but you're helping us get to where we want to be and helping so many people in this hiring experience. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. You're very welcome. And, thank you to everyone else that's listened to this episode. And thank you to anyone that supports Mason and the Motiv team. If you do that for me, that means a lot to me as well. It's truly a great business, and Mason's a great individual with a great team behind him. So please go check them out. And Mason, thank you again for your time. And I'm sure we'll be connecting again soon.
Thanks, Zach.